So I'm here at one of the other follies in the Wentworth estate, and this is the famous Eye of the Needle. You can see it's a beautiful kind of sculpture that would have at one point several centuries ago run straight through down onto as a path, possibly going straight down to the main house. Some people say that in their write-ups of this. What's fascinating about this is that the monument, the folly itself, is based on supposedly based on the biblical teachings in the New Testament of Jesus saying that it would be impossible for a rich man to go to heaven as it would be for a camel to drive, a carriage to drive through the eye of a needle. Of course, the Earls of Wentworth rebuked that by saying that, well, it would be possible in some ways to drive a carriage through the eye of a needle. And thinking about the understanding of the wealth in the land and the fact that this was a bloodline, an elite, almost royal bloodline, where the Wentworths or the Fitzwilliams were given the titleage of Marquis, and which is basically one under the title of Duke. So, the royals, dukes, marquis, then earl and baron and so on in terms of gentry. They were quite important really to the authority at the time, not least in their opposition to the Jacobite revolution that tried to put the Stuart line back on the throne of England. I won't go into all of that, but the idea, the vast amounts of wealth and the land ownership and the fact that everything is private still is to this day, unlike other parts of the world where you can have the freedom to roam, of course. Well, you can with respect in certain places here, but it's not the same. And I just find it fascinating. I made a series of video blogs, when was it? 10 years ago, talking about the idea of land ownership, and they're in my YouTube channel. You'll see me looking a lot younger and sitting in an armchair talking about the land ownership and the fact that, and it hasn't changed much at all in terms of 93% of the population living on something like 7% of the land, and wealth and land being the key. This is quite a statement, really, if you think about it. It's quite a statement back then, in that period, in the 18th century, as this bloodline obviously dominated the area and kept the so-called peasants in their working life, of course, the miners and the steel works and so on, up until 1947, when it was all handed over to the government. The amount of money that's in the land is in terms of levies and tithes that was paid to the landowners and the church, of course, back in that period. So I just wanted to come here and just film it, take some photographs, just to show you that there is a semi kind of Christian stroke interest in the Palladian Doric feature in the Doric temple, in terms of its understanding in terms of the Gospels and the Scriptures, but also with a major interest in architecture, as the bloodline families did have in that period in the 18th century, especially the Greek architecture. Yeah, so it was in Matthew 19, I think, 24, where the supposed incident with the rich man approaching the teacher Jesus and saying to him, how can I get into the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus supposedly replied by saying, sell all your things, give away everything to the poor, and come and follow me. And he said, he pondered on it and said he couldn't do that. Why would he, being a very wealthy man like the Wentworths? Why would they? Why would they give everything in that sense? And that's not to take away from the fact that families, elite families and bloodlines did give things back to the locals and did make things easier through various forms which this video is not about. It was the point of the teaching that is the important point, that it was quite obvious in the philosophy and understanding of how this physical world is governed through money, through mammon, and that the richest of the richest in this world, just by definition, seem to be worshipping something else, which is not necessarily money. It's not money that they're worshipping. They're worshipping other things. And if you look at some of the other videos and things that I've been painting and illustrating for quite a few decades now, what they're illustrating, what my paintings are illustrating, are that these elite bloodlines were worshipping what we would call, in simple terms, dark forces or satanic forces. So the idea that the rich man can't pass through the eye of the needle symbolically is because while ever they are gathering wealth to themselves, and while ever they're worshipping mammon and putting money in front of other things like justice and righteousness and peace, while ever they do that, they cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And what is the kingdom of heaven in the biblical sense? Or in the teachings of the true Christians, the Cathars? What would that be? That would be this state of peace and truth that we have within ourselves. Our spirit, our eternal spirit, is connected to this kingdom, or this reality, this infinite wisdom and awareness and love that we so desperately need in the world. But you know something? It's not the rich and the wealthy that are going to fix this, because they would have fixed it by now. They never were going to fix it. It's the simple, the poor, the meek, and the people that have inherited the earth to this day, or the righteousness in their hearts and what the earth really is about and what the land is really about, that will be the first into the so-called kingdom of heaven from a religious point of view. Now, I'm not trying to preach to people, I'm just explaining things as I see them in terms of coming to these interesting places like this. But we have to remember that also these places were very much symbolic of the Masonic structures of that period as well, in the 18th century and 17th century. Such a lovely time of day when the sun is setting. If you're ever passing through this area, through South Yorkshire, it's worth a visit. Come and see it.